hope so.
All right, good evening, everybody. I hope you are all well, wherever you are in the world. I hope that you and your family are keeping well. I can hear an echo of myself. Raphael? Thank you. So tonight's shiur is dedicated in memory of Chaim ben Aaron HaKohen Grossman by his children, Fred Grossman and Kathy Paluch. And thank you to both of you for your contribution, for your participation in everything that goes on at Mizrahi, and for dedicating tonight's shiur in memory of your father. And this shiur should provide an aliyah for his neshama. We wish you arichut yamim. The topic of this evening's shiur is one of my favorite topics. It's Rabbi's Child Syndrome, and hopefully this is going to be relevant not only to those of us who are Rabbi's children or are parents of Rabbi's children, but I think there's a lot here to consider about parents and grandparents and children and grandchildren and that dynamic when it comes to keeping our tradition going. And our starting point is a passage which takes place in Parshat Pinchas. We've been through the passage in this week's Parsha which deals with the division of land to different tribes. We've had the story of the daughters of Tzlofchad, and then we read in source number 1. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Hashem said to Moshe, Aleh el har ha'avarim hazeh, go up to this Mount Avarim, which we know is also known as Har Nevo, mainly known as Har Nevo. Ure'eh et ha'aretz asher natati levnei Yisrael, and you should see the land which I have given to the children of Israel. V'ra'ita ota, and you, Moshe, will see the land. V'ne'esafta el amecha, you are going to be gathered into your people, which is it's a euphemism for dying. Gamata, you as well. Kashen esaf Aaron achicha, the same way that your brother Aaron died. And Moshe, upon hearing that he's going to pass away and he's not going to be able to lead us into the land, he doesn't wallow in self-pity at this point. He doesn't complain, but his immediate response is to ensure that there will be a fitting successor for Am Yisrael. For indeed, as we know, when Aaron passed away, and we've already seen this in the Torah, Aaron passes away after transferring the leadership onto his son Elazar, and there's that moving ceremony before he dies where his clothes are removed from him and placed onto Elazar. So Moshe says, okay, if I'm going up this mountain in order to pass away, well, the time has come for me to ensure that I'm also going to have an appropriate successor to continue the leadership of the nation. Now, when exactly Moshe passed away in relation to going up this mountain, you can read all about it in Rabbi Kennard's piece in this week's Mizrahi's printable package. And so Moshe says to Hashem, Vayomer Moshe el Hashem le'mor, Moshe said to Hashem as follows, Yifgod Hashem Elokei haruchot l'chol basar ish al ha'edah. Hashem, the God of the spirits of all flesh, should appoint somebody to lead the assembly. And the role of this person shall be, Asher Yetzei Lifneihem, he will go out before them. V'asher Yavo Lifneihem, he'll come in before them. V'asher Yotziam, he will take them out. V'asher Yeviem, he will bring them in. You see, sometimes a leader leads by walking in front of the people and he follows them, and sometimes he needs to schlep them. Either way, V'lo tieh adat Hashem katzon asher ein lahem ro'eh. Moshe says to Hashem, your assembly should not be like flock without a shepherd. And then Hashem says in response, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Kach lecha et Yehoshua bin Nun. Take for yourself Yehoshua bin Nun, ish asher ruach bo, a person who possesses spirit, because Moshe has addressed Hashem as the God of the spirit of all flesh. And he says, here is a person who possesses spirit who can take over from you. V'samachta et yadcha alav, and you shall place your hand on him, give him smicha, transfer the leadership onto Yehoshua. And the major focus of what I'd like to discuss tonight is, why was Moshe not succeeded by his sons? And the omission of Moshe's sons here stands out if you contrast this passage as to when his brother Aaron passes away. Aaron passes away and is replaced by one of his sons. Moshe passes away. He's not replaced by either Gershom or Eliezer. Neither of them replaced Moshe. What's going on here? And according to the Midrash, actually, Moshe asked for his sons to succeed him. As we see in source number 2, Yifkod Hashem, Hashem will appoint. Mara alavakesh hadavar hazeh, achash seder nachalot. Why was Moshe asking for this at this point in time, after we've had the passage in the Torah dealing with the division of the land? Ella, what happened was as follows. After Moshe has seen that the daughters of Tzlofchad are going to inherit their father's portion, Amar Moshe says, Harei hasha'ah, the time has come, she'ed ba batzarki. I'm going to now make my own claim. Not your shot, if these girls will inherit their father's portion, bedin hu she'arshu b'nai et kvodi, it's only fair that my children, or at least one of my children, will take over from me. So according to the Midrash, when Moshe said to Hashem, please appoint somebody who's able to lead the nation appropriately, in Moshe's mind he's thinking, please appoint one of my sons to succeed me. What happened though? Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem responded to Moshe with the following proverb from Mishlei. Notzer te'ena yochal pirya. The one who guards the fig tree will eat its fruit. Which means the person who works hard will eat the fruit of their labors. And fig trees are chosen here specifically. I've never picked fruit off a fig tree myself, but Chazal explain that whereas other trees, you can just pick all the fruit off in one go, when it comes to fig trees, there are numerous points at which the figs need to be collected from the tree, and each fig needs to be ripe and the right color in its own time. Harvesting fruit from a fig tree is a much harder job, which requires more work and greater consistency. Either way, Hashem says to Moshe, if you work hard, you'll be able to eat the fruits of your labors. Banecha, however, your sons, Moshe, yashvu lahem, they just sat doing their own thing. Velo asku b'Torah, and your sons weren't engaged in Torah. However, Yehoshua, on the other hand, he served you so much, and he gave you so much honor. He would get up early in your Beit Midrash, and he would stay behind late in the Beit Midrash. Yehoshua is the one who would organize the benches for learning. He would lay out the mats. He would do the dirty work. Seeing as Yehoshua served you with all of his might, he is appropriate to serve Israel. So we see that Moshe wanted his sons to take over from him. And Hashem said to Moshe, your sons sat there doing their own thing. Yehoshua is the appropriate leader because Yehoshua is the one who worked hard. It's because of this midrash that I particularly enjoy organizing the chairs and tables in Shul. You know, over recent months, we've had different formations. We've done inside and outside and different distances and numbers. And I like coming to Shul early in order to set out the chairs because the Midrash says that that is why Yehoshua was appropriate for leadership. I don't know if Danny Lamb is with us tonight. He's in Sydney. Danny, if you're listening, I like the other things I do as well. And the cleaning staff can keep this job in general. But there's something enjoyable about being involved in the practical side of setting up shul. That's what Yehoshua did. He was deserving of leadership. Moshe's sons, on the other hand, they just sat and did their own thing, and therefore they were not able to succeed him. Now, how did that happen? We're looking at Moshe Rabbeinu. Rabbeinu means our teacher. Moshe is our greatest teacher of all time. How could it be that Moshe's very own children appear to not have been engaged in Torah study? But if we look earlier in the Torah, it appears that this is not the first time where Moshe's children are missing. Let's look back towards the beginning of Sefer Bamidbar, Perek Gimel, in source number 3. And there we have a very obvious omission. There we are told, Ve'ele toldot Aharon u'Moshe. these are the generations of Aharon and Moshe. And when is this accounting? Biyom diber Hashem et Moshe b'Har Sinai, on the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe on Har Sinai. So, who are the children of Aaron and Moshe at the time that Moshe receives the Torah on Sinai? Well, let's look at their names. Ve'ele shmot b'nei Aharon. These are the names of the sons of Aharon. HaBachor, the oldest one, was Nadav. Va'avihu, he had a son called Avihu. Elazar ve'Itamar, and the other two as well. Eile shmot b'nei Aharon haKohanim haMeshuchim. These are the names of the son of Aharon, the anointed Kohanim, Hashem Milei Adam Lechahen, who were inaugurated in order to serve as Kohanim. And as we know, Vayamad Nadav Avihu Lifnei Hashem, the Nadav and Avihu passed away before Hashem. V'hakrivam Esh Zara Lifnei Hashem, when they offered up the foreign fire before Hashem, Bamidbar Sinai and Midbar Sinai, Uvanim no hayu lahem, they didn't have children. Vayechahen Elazar v'Itamar al Pnei Aaron Avihem. And the other two sons, Elazar and Itamar, served in the life of their father, Aaron. And then the Torah goes on to something else. What's missing here? What's missing here is the sons of Moshe. We're told these are the generations of Aharon and Moshe. We're then told the names of Aharon's sons. We're even told the names of Aaron's sons who passed away, yet Moshe's sons who are still alive are not mentioned here. It's an obvious omission. What happened to the sons of Moshe and why are they left out? So Rashi explains here a nice concept which doesn't go the whole way in answering this question. Rashi explains in source 4, Ve'ela toldot Aaron and Moshe, these are the generations of Aaron and Moshe. Ve'eno maskir ela b'nei Aaron, but only the sons of Aaron are mentioned in this passage. V'nikra'u toldot Moshe, the sons of Aaron are also called the generations of Moshe. Why are Aaron's sons called Moshe's children? Lefi shelamdan Torah, because Moshe taught them Torah. Melamedes teaches us, Shekol ha-melamedet ben chavero Torah, whoever teaches somebody else's children Torah, ma'aleh alav hakatuv ki'ilu yilado. The Torah considers it as if you have given birth to that person, you become that person's spiritual parent. It is like a parent and child relationship that you have between a teacher and student. And when did this take place? Bottom line of page 1, B'yom diber Hashem et Moshe, the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe, Na'asu elu hatoradot shelo, these became his generations, shelamdan ma shelimed mepei hagvura, when he taught them what he learned from Hashem. So Hashem gives the Torah to Moshe on Sinai, and because Moshe taught this son to the children of Aharon, Moshe is considered their father. Now, this is a nice concept about the role of teachers and the importance of teachers and how the relationship between teachers and students is an important one and the partnership between teachers and parents is an important partnership. But what's going on here? Why is Moshe teaching Torah to the children of Aharon and not teaching Torah to the children of Moshe? It's a crazy thing. These guys are considered his sons because he taught them Torah. Why aren't his sons considered his sons? Why wasn't he teaching Torah to his own children? And the Khatam Sofer in source number 5 has a very, very harsh answer, which if he didn't write it, I wouldn't write it myself. The Khatam Sofer himself was a leader of a very significant rabbinic dynasty in his family. So he had a lot to think about when it comes to ensuring that Torah will be passed on and the leadership will be passed on from generation to generation. But let's look at what he says in source number 5. Ve'ela todot Aaron Moshe, etc. on Har Sinai, Pirish Rashi. Rashi explains, as we saw, Shelimed Emahem Torah, because Rashi learned Torah with the sons of Aaron. V'atam bazeh. The reason is as follows. Ki haya Ol Yisrael al Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom. The yoke of Israel was on Moshe Rabbeinu ad shelo hishkiach al banav, to the extent that he did not pay proper attention to his own children. A very, very harsh statement by the Khatam Sofer. He says, Moshe, because of his national role, did not properly supervise his children. He didn't properly engage with them and invest in their Torah education. Why didn't Moshe's children succeed him? Because Moshe was too busy dealing with the problems of Am Yisrael and not busy dealing enough with his children at home. And he goes on and says, V'chetiv, and it's written in Shemot, Vayakol mevakesh Hashem yetzei el oel moed. What Moshe did was he put up this tent somewhere called an ohel moed, and whoever wanted to know a halachic issue, whoever wanted to come after Hashem would come to the ohel moed. So you'd come to the ohel moed and you'd stand there and you'd join the queue to have some time with Moshe Rabbeinu. However, Umisha lo bikesh, someone who wasn't interested in seeking Hashem, lo yatzad, didn't go out. Uvanav lo hayu me'amavakshim me'atzmam. Moshe's children didn't come out of home to travel to that tent to learn from him. Moshe's children didn't attend his shiurim. Moshe's children didn't stand in the queue with everyone else in order to spend some time with their father. The only time to learn from Moshe, the only opportunity to learn from Moshe was if you were a Yehoshua, you got there early, you set things up, or you made the effort and you went there and you stood in the queue and you went to learn from Moshe. Moshe's children were at home, but they did not go to learn with Moshe, and Moshe was not at home teaching them there either. Because Moshe was so busy with the community, he was unable to bring them along. He was simply too busy and troubled and preoccupied as a leader to bring his own children along to learn with him. Upirish Rashi Parshat Yitro, and he says that Rashi explains in Parshat Yitro, Min hahar el haham. We see what happened is when Moshe comes down from Har Sinai, he goes to the people. We'll just have a quick look at source 6 to see the whole pasuk. Vayered Moshe min hahar el ha'am. Moshe comes down, this is in the preparation for Matan Torah. Moshe comes down from Har Sinai to the people, Vayikadesh et ha'am, and he sanctified the people, V'yachabsu simlotam, and they washed their clothes. So, back inside the Khatam Sofer, what does it mean that Moshe came down from the mountain and he went to the people? Shelo lifnei lebeito. Moshe comes home from the mountain. Moshe comes home from his work trip and he didn't go home. Ela minahar ela am. He comes home from his work trip and he goes straight into the meeting with the people. He didn't come home in between. Moshe goes straight from one work engagement to another work engagement. B'im kain, therefore we see, beyond Diber Hashem et Moshe b'Har Sinai, it was specifically on the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe on Har Sinai, Na'asu Eile Toldotav, that Aaron's children become his children. It is because Moshe received the Torah, which was a turning point, that from that point onwards, it was Aaron's children were the ones who followed in his ways. Uvalav lo na'asu ki'ilu heim Toldotav, and his sons didn't follow in that path. V'hakol garam yom asher diber Hashem et Moshe b'Har Sinai. It was on that great day that Hashem spoke to Moshe on Har Sinai, which on a national level is such an amazing day, an important day, and a crucial day. In terms of Moshe's private, personal life, it was a very difficult turning point, because at that point, Moshe became the property of the nation as the teacher of the nation, and he didn't even come home before running out to give the message to the people. These are very, very harsh words of the Khatam Sofer. His son, the Katav Sofer, elsewhere writes similar things. So at least in that family, the apples didn't fall far from the tree at that stage. But these are very harsh concepts. But I'd like to ask a question. There's a criticism here that when Moshe came down from Har Sinai, he didn't go to see his family. But I want to ask a question, and the question is, where was Moshe's family when he came down from Har Sinai? Because the Khatam Sofer is painting this picture that they're at home and the kids are saying, is daddy back from work yet? And now he's on the mountain, he's talking to Hashem, we'll let you know when he's finished. You know, and Moshe doesn't come back. That's the picture that the Khatam Sofer is painting here. But I want to know where his children were at the time. And I want to now go to the beginning of Parshat Yitro. Because in Parshat Yitro, we're told in source number 7 as follows. Vayishma Yitro chohen Midyan. Yitro, the priest of Midyan, choten Moshe, the father-in-law of Moshe, heard. Eit kol asher asay Elokim l'Moshe u'Yisrael amo. Everything that Hashem did to Moshe and for his people, Israel. Ki yotzi Hashem et Yisrael miMitzrayim, that Hashem took the Jews out of Egypt. So at the beginning of Parshat Yitro hears some amazing things. And what does Yitro do as a result? Vayikach Yitro choten Moshe et Tzipora eshet Moshe achar shilucheha. Moshe brings Tzipora along with him, Moshe's wife, because she has been living with Yitro. Ve'et shnei vaneha, and the two boys. Asher shem ha'echad Gershom, because one of them is called Gershom, and the other one is called what he's called. Yitro brings Moshe's family to the Midbar. What this means is, as we know, Moshe's family were not in Egypt when Moshe had the whole discussion with Paro throughout the 10 plagues, Makat Bechorot, coming out of Egypt, being stuck by the sea, going through the sea, singing after the sea. Moshe's family were not part of any of this. They only turn up later. They have been living with their father-in-law, or with Moshe's father-in-law, with Grandpa Yitro, in Midian. Now, at what stage was Moshe's family reunited? In source number 8, the Mechilta, the Midrash, and numerous Midrashim do this. The Midrash asks at what stage Yitro comes along to be reunited with Moshe. Vayishma Yitro heard, Mashmu'a Shama. What was it that Yitro heard? Uva, which made him come along. Rabbi Yeshua says, Milchemet Amalek Shama Uva. He heard about the war with Amalek. Sheken hi ktuva b'tzidah, because that's written juxtaposed to this. Shleimar, as it says, Vaychelash Yoshua et Amalek. He says he heard about Amalek. He came along. Rabbi Elazar Hamodai Omer. But then there's another opinion, which is Matan Torah Shama Uva. Yitro heard about Matan Torah, and then he came along. Now, I think this is a very significant view, because based on this view in the Midrash, if Rabbi Elazar Hamodai is correct, when Moshe Rabbeinu comes down from Har Sinai and he doesn't go home to his family, it's because his family wasn't even at home. There was no home. They were in Midian. They were with Yitro. The Torah is not written in chronological order. The beginning of Parshat Yitro occurs before Matan Torah. Moshe and his kids didn't have an opportunity to come together at that time. So with the children receiving the chinuch of Yitro in Midian, who are Moshe's spiritual offspring at this time? Who cleaves to Moshe? It's his nephews. It's the children of Aharon. And at that stage, the Torah tells us, B'yom diber Hashem et Moshe b'Har Sinai, on the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe on Har Sinai, when Moshe's kids weren't even around, these were the children of Moshe and Aharon. In the wilderness, these were the kids of Moshe and Aharon. Moshe didn't have children of his own in the wilderness. His children were somewhere else. Either way, whether Moshe's children were in the wilderness and Moshe didn't engage with them, or Moshe's children were elsewhere and Moshe did not engage with them, either way, the end product is the same. And the end product is Moshe's children were not fitting to succeed him as the leader of the nation. Now, it is very clear that these children were receiving their education not from Moshe, but from Yitro for a while. And let's look at another midrash in source number 9, which has a concerning concept, and we will see the long-term consequences of this soon. The Mechilta tells us in source number 9, when Moshe went to his father-in-law Yitro and he said, Ten li Tzipora bitchal isha, can I please marry your daughter Tzipora? I see my father-in-law is watching this shiur. My father-in-law made this much easier for me. What did Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, say to him? He said, Amar lo Yitro, Yitro said to him, you know what? Kabel alacha davar zeh she'omer lecha. One condition. If you keep to this one condition, vani notna lecha lisha, you can marry my daughter Tzipora. Moshe says, okay, Amar lo ma'u, what's the condition of marrying your daughter? Amar lo Yitro says, Ben shi'eh lecha tchila, the first son who's born to you, yiyeh la'avodah zarah, he should be an idolater. When it comes to your firstborn son, can I please bring him up in my family tradition? You've got your traditions. You want to believe in Hashem, that's your choice. Your first son, though, I want to provide the chinuch. I want your first son to be for Avodah Zarah. Mikan va'elach, your kids after that, l'shem shamayim, you can do whatever you like, you can have from kids after that. And the Midrash says, v'kibel alav, Moshe said, okay. Moshe agreed to this deal according to the Midrash. And if some of us are thinking Moshe didn't mean it, Yitro thought that as well. Amar lo, Yitro said to him, Ishavali, swear to me, I want this to be a proper deal. Vayishava and he swore to him, the Midrash says. Moshe swore to Yitro that his first son would be Avodah Zarah. And that's why we see, Lefichach, therefore, Higdim HaMalach Laharog et Moshe. The angel went ahead and tried to kill Moshe when Moshe was on his way to Mitzrayim with the children. We know this story from the Torah, and then Tzipporah comes and she does the Brit Milah, which saves Moshe's life. What we see here is that the chinuch which is provided by Yitro for Moshe's children is the chinuch of Avodah Zarah. Yitro was interested in at least Moshe's firstborn son having the chinuch of Avodah Zarah. According to the Midrash, for whatever reason, Moshe agreed to this deal. Moshe is not at home. What kind of education are these children receiving? They're receiving the idolatrous education from Yitro in Midian. So it's no major surprise that in that generation, there wasn't somebody, even especially if they weren't even at Matan Torah, there wasn't somebody who was appropriate to succeed Moshe as the leader of the nation. Now, what we've seen so far is somewhat surprising. What we're going to see next, if you're not aware of it, is even more surprising. Because then we go to the next generation. Okay, Aaron's sons succeeded him. Moshe's sons did not succeed him. What do we know about Moshe's grandchildren? And now we're going to go somewhere completely different. We're going to go to the book of Shoftim, chapter 18, in source number 10. And this chapter has a story, Perek Yud Zayin and Perek Yud Chet of Shoftim. It's a really fascinating story with many messages and nuances. If you'd like to look it up and learn it, this story is known as the story of Pesel Micha, the idol of Micha. There was this fellow called Micha. There are lots of stages in the story. He builds an idol with money which he had originally stolen from his mother, then returns to his mother, and she gave it back to him on condition he builds an idol. He makes this idol. And this fellow called Micha, who had appointed one of his own children to be a Kohen, comes across somebody. He is from the tribe of Levi, who lives in Yehuda. And he comes across this fellow, and his name was Yehonatan, the son of Gershom, the son of Menashe. And Micha, as we read in Shoftim, adopts this person, and he appoints this person called Yehonatan to be a Kohen, not like a Kohen in our term Kohen, to be a priest in his idolatrous Beit Elokim, in his idolatrous temple where he had an ephod, and he copied many of the practices of Judaism, but he did it in an idolatrous way. When I read through this perek, it's like vegetarian burgers and vegetarian schnitzels. You know, vegetarians who don't want to eat meat, with their soy products, make it look like a burger and make it look like a schnitzel and try to make it taste like a burger and try to make it taste like a schnitzel. But if you're going to be vegetarian, then just don't have burgers and schnitzels. So here you have this guy, Micha, who wants his thing to look like a Jewish place and smell like a Jewish place and taste like a Jewish place. So he wants a kohen and he wants an ephod and he wants all these things. Anyway, the leading character in this idolatrous practice was this person called Yehonatan ben Gershom ben Menashe. In source number 10, Vayakimu lahem bnei Dan et haParsel, the members of the tribe of Dan established this idol for themselves. Yehonatan ben Gershom ben Menashe, Yehonatan, the son of Gershom, the son of Menashe, who uvanav, he and his kids, hayu chohanim l'shevet hadani. They were the idolatrous priests of the tribe of Dan ad yom glota aretz, until the time when we were exiled for the land. So for a whole period of time in the tribe of Dan, the leadership was this family of Yehonatan and his children, the son of Gershom, the son of Menashe. Who was Yehonatan ben Gershom ben Menashe? The Gemara in source number 11 in Bava Batra, in a completely different context, throws this thing at us. And it tells us, it says, Yehonatan ben Gershom ben Menashe hu vanav hayochanim l'shevet hadani. And the Gemara asks, wait a second. V'chi ben Menashe was Yehonatan's grandfather. Menashe was Gershom, the son of Menashe. V'halo ben Moshe. Wasn't Moshe the grandfather of Yehonatan, the idolatrous priest. Dichtiv, as it says in the Torah, B'nai Moshe, Gershom of Eliezer, the sons of Moshe are Gershom and Eliezer. Now we're talking, historically speaking now, in Shoftim, Perek Yud Zayin, Yud Chet, we're only 30 years after we've entered the land of Israel. I mean, this story, there's a debate of when it happened, if it happened, but we're talking a few decades after we left the land of Israel. It's very realistic that Gershom in this story is the son of Moshe, and therefore, Yehonatan ben Gershom ben Menashe, is actually Yehonatan, the grandson of Moshe. Moshe's grandchild is an idolatrous priest, and his children as well, and Moshe's great-grandchildren were also off the derech. So why is he called the grandchild of Menashe? Because this guy behaved in the ways of Menashe, the one who was known for his terrible idolatrous ways. He's tied on to Menashe, meaning this guy behaved like the Menashe who was known for his terrible idolatry. So Moshe's grandchild, according to the Midrash, which appears in the Gemara, was completely off the derech. And in source number 12, we read, Rashi there on on Shoftim tells us, why was Moshe's name changed to Menashe? It was in order to cover up Moshe's embarrassment. How embarrassing is it for Moshe Rabbeinu that his grandchild is an idolatrous priest? Therefore, the letter Nun was added on in his name. So on the one hand, Moshe's name is changed in order to hide his identity. At the same time, the Gemara reveals his identity. So we're trying to cover up his honor, but it should still be known. V'nichtav tluya, Rashi says. The letter Nun is written hanging. We'll see what that means in a moment. So if you look at the image which we have here on our screens, if you look at the second line there, these are the psukim as they appear in the Tanakh. In the second line there, we have Ben Gershom, the son of Ben Gershom, Ben Menashe, the son of Menashe. And if you look at the fourth word of the second line of that image, you will see that the letter Nun in Menashe in Tanakh is raised. It's not in line with the other letters. It is a raised letter, the fourth word of the second line of the image. And that's the Torah's way, Tanakh's way, of putting a letter in brackets. It's almost like saying this letter was added in. It was slotted in, but it doesn't really belong there. Why did that happen? Rashi says in order to protect Moshe's reputation and to save Moshe from embarrassment. We don't want to write that it's the grandson of Moshe Rabbeinu in the book of Shoftim, who's an idolatrous priest. And therefore his name was changed. What we see therefore is that the challenges which Moshe faced when educating his own children continued onto the next generation and the generation after that. We see, therefore, in the Midrash, when the Midrash says that Moshe made a deal with Yitro, whether he actually made that deal or not, Yitro was the one who provided the chinuch for these children. And if Menashe was raised by Yitro, it's no surprise that Menashe's son, Yehonatan, goes in the way of Yitro. Moshe's own grandchildren were idolaters, which is a hugely difficult concept for us to fathom and to imagine, but that is the case. And so we've got these two brothers, Aaron and Moshe, but look how different their families are. Tonight's shiur is dedicated in the name of somebody called Chaim ben Aharon, a descendant of Aaron HaKohen, who's called Chaim, the son of Aharon. The name Aharon is still alive in the family. The line is still going strong. These people still know their Kohanim. Chaim ben Aharon can be, if you give some poetic license, it can mean that the children of Aharon are still alive. They're still active. They're still engaged. They're still involved. Moshe's children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, we don't know about them. And even if there are people nowadays called Moshe Levi, they're probably cousins. We're not talking about Moshe's descendants. They were from elsewhere in the tribe of Levi. Moshe's own children go off the derech, which is a very, very difficult concept for us to consider. And I think the Midrash hints at this as well in source number 13, because the Midrash on Parshat Yitro, when Yitro is called a Kohen, Midian, the Midrash tells us, Rabbi Yeshua says, Komer Haya, he was a priest. He wasn't a Kohen, he was a priest. Ki'inyan, the same way that it Shenema, that it says, V'Yonatan ben Gershom, Yehonatan, the son of Gershom, was a Kohen. So the Midrash connects Yitro the Kohen with his grandson, Yehonatan the Kohen. Neither of them were actually Kohanim in the sense that we use the word, but both of them were related and both of them were idolaters. What I've described so far this evening about Moshe Rabbeinu and his family and the chinuch of his children and his grandchildren is not unique to the family of Moshe Rabbeinu. And indeed, it is true that I think we can all think of families where you have great rabbinic figures whose children and grandchildren did not turn out how you might expect rabbinic children and grandchildren to turn out. And sometimes, I'm not going to mention any names, but sometimes you have grandchildren who don't know how to daven, who don't know how to make a bracha, who have the very same names as their rabbinic grandparents or great-grandparents. They have the very same names as those people and they know absolutely nothing. They're completely disengaged. And you think, what's happened here? How could it be that in this rabbi's family, look what happened to his own children, look what happened to his grandchildren? And this is not an uncommon phenomenon. In fact, the Gemara we're about to learn tells us that this is a very common phenomenon. And the Gemara in Nedarim, source number 14, page 81a, asks the question, already at the times of the Gemara, they ask the following question. Why is it uncommon for the children of Talmidei Chachamim to become Talmidei Chachamim themselves? And there are numerous answers suggested in the Gemara. Amar Rav Yosef says, Shelo Yomru Torah Yerushahi Lahem, so that no one should say that the Torah is the inheritance of that particular family. Torah should not belong to one family. Torah should not belong to one dynasty. Torah belongs to every single one of us equally, and therefore, by design, you don't have great rabbinic families generation after generation usually, so that no one should think that you have to have a certain surname in order to learn Torah. No. Rav Sheshet Bereit Rav Idi Omer, Rav Sheshet, the son of Rav Idi, says, Kedei shelo yitgardu al hatzibur. By design, what happens is that you don't have children taking over from their parents so that they don't lord it over the congregation. You don't want to have families becoming too powerful. Mazutra says, no, it's mipnei shehein mitgavrin al hatzibur. It's because of their behavior. Because they're already lording it over the community, their own children don't take over. Rav Ashi Omer, this is my favorite answer because I don't understand it. Rav Ashi says, Mishum dekaru le'inshi chamari, because they call people donkeys. Great answer. So, why is it often the case that rabbinic children don't take after their parents? Because they call people donkeys. It probably suggests a certain disrespect and disdain and disregard for other people, and that arrogance creeps in and the complacency arrives, and that leads to bad results. Final answer, Ravina Omer, Ravina says, that they don't make a bracha on Torah prior to learning Torah, which has been discussed and described in many ways. On a simple level, it means they don't have an appreciation for Torah, because sometimes when you're brought up completely surrounded by Torah, you don't realize how special that Torah is and you become complacent, and complacency is a terrible thing. It is therefore that very common, not uncommon, but very common, that the children of great Torah scholars don't become Torah scholars, and the grandchildren can sometimes go off the derech as well. And that sometimes is a tragic result of the realities of the profession and the job. And I don't think this is unique to rabbinic families. There are studies done about the families of leaders of other faiths, and I don't think it's unique to faith leaders either. It can happen in many families where you have very dominant parents, or the parents are public figures or very involved in the community, and it can have certain results on the family if you're not aware of how important it is to avoid in advance. There was a study done of rabbis' children by somebody called Irving Levitz, which was published in the Tradition Journal, and I brought just one of his comments here. And he says as follows: a significant number of respondents, this is 70%, reported that they perceived their fathers as being over-involved with synagogue life, and their mothers over-involved with the children. 20% of the respondents described their fathers as emotionally absent from family life, which means even if they were around, they weren't really around because their minds were elsewhere. And he describes the fact that the role of the rabbi is one whereby they're physically distant from their family and emotionally distant from their family, and it has an impact on the rabbi's children. I think that if you do a survey nowadays, more than 70% of children would say that their parents are too busy at work. Or certainly more than 20% of children nowadays in every family might suggest that their parents aren't as emotionally present as they could be or should be when they are with their children. But he suggests that one of the reasons why rabbinic children don't necessarily follow in their parents' footsteps is because of the physical and emotional absence of their parents when they have to deal with other things, which is a fascinating concept to consider, even if you're not a rabbi or a rabbi's child or a parent of a rabbi. If you have a rabbi, it's very important that we should all be realistic in terms of our expectations of the investment that any one person can give outside their family, and how important it is for everybody to prioritize their own families as part of what they do. Baruch Hashem at Mizrahi, that's not a problem. Everything's great. I'm talking about other shuls. Either way, what we've seen this evening, I would like us to take 3 key lessons. The first lesson is the importance of hard work, because this is why Yehoshua was appointed the successor of Moshe. And the Midrash tells us in source number 16, She'ein lecha chaviv lifnei hakadosh baruch hu, k'shaliach hamishtalech la'asot mitzvah, v'noten nafsho kedei sheyatzliach b'shlichuto. Hashem loves nothing more than a messenger who's sent on a mission and gives of themselves in order to succeed in that mission. Meaning, Hashem loves people who work hard and get the job done. There are lots of people with lots of ideas and lots of people with lots of suggestions. Hashem loves people who get the job done. We all know people like this. People who they get the job, it's their mission, they deliver, they get things done. That's what Hashem does. That's what you need from your leaders. That's why Yehoshua was appointed, because Yehoshua was somebody who worked hard on behalf of the community, gave of himself, and got the job done. Message number 2 is that we should all be aware that Torah is not something which we're naturally going to receive magically by our parents or our surroundings. In source 17, Rabbi Yossi tells us in the Mishnah and Avot, V'hatkein atzmecha lilmod Torah. Work hard and prepare yourself to learn Torah. She'eina Yerusha lach. Torah is not a Yerusha. Torah is not an inheritance. You can get a phone call saying the bad news is some distant relative passed away. The good news is they left you a Yerusha. You've done nothing and something's arrived in your bank account. That doesn't happen with Torah. For Torah, you have to learn hard. It doesn't make a difference what your surname is. And it doesn't make a difference what an amazing Talmidat Chachamim your mother is. And it doesn't make a difference how great your grandfather was if you yourself are not somebody who's going to make the effort and learn Torah. Torah does not naturally pass down from one generation to the next. You have to work hard in order to learn Torah. And the final message I'd like us to take from what happened to Moshe's family is that if it happened in Moshe's family, it can happen in any family. That's important for those families where sometimes there's a level of guilt, where your children or grandchildren don't turn out exactly as you expected. You should know it happened to Moshe's family. It happened to many families over history. Ultimately, our children have free choice. Ultimately, we all have free choice. And ultimately, each person is going to do what they decide to do and how they decide to use their own free will. And you can give them the best education and do absolutely everything right, and still things can go wrong. But at the same time, it's a warning against complacency. It doesn't make a difference what your family is and who your parents were. We can never take it for granted that our children are going to continue in our spiritual path. If Moshe Rabbeinu's grandchildren and great-grandchildren can become idolaters, our grandchildren and great-grandchildren can become idolaters. I recall once my father gave a certain psak for a certain member of my family, which I felt to be too lenient. I was an arrogant teenager at the time. And I said to my father, come on, I understand for certain people, you have to rely on this lenient opinion, and you can give them the lenient opinion. But surely inside our own family, you know, why can't you adopt a higher standard and expect more? And my father responded and he said, I want you to know, I never take it for granted that any of my children will want to be frum when they grow up. I never assume that that's going to be the case. And you cannot assume that that's going to be the case. We can never, ever take it for granted. And we shouldn't think other families, you know, those donkeys, those people, never assume that those kind of people you have to relate to in a certain way, but our families, everything's going to be okay. Obviously, our children are going to value the things that we value, and obviously our children are going to cherish the things that we cherish. That's just not the case, and it's not going to happen naturally. Being a parent and being a grandparent is a major responsibility. It's a tremendous amount of work. It's something we have to work at very, very hard, and Bezrat Hashem, we should be helped by Hashem in this endeavor. We should all have nachat from our children and from our grandchildren. We should work hard. We should work hard in general, work hard to receive Torah, and never take it for granted that our children and grandchildren will want to do the same. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and I wish you well wherever you are.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. Ashkosh, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you so much.
Shabbat Shalom, Charles.
Thank you.
You have the benefit of Ariella and your parents and my parents-in-law as well. We're all here listening to you.
So Shabbat Shalom to Altaya's mother and grandparents. Nonna and Nonna are there?
They are indeed.
Yeah.
Hello, hello, hello.
How are you, Danny?
I am grand, Baruch Hashem. How are you?
Nice to hear you.
Excellent lesson.
Thank
Danny,
you. Thank you very
so
much.
It was really great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ari.
Shabbat
All
Shalom.
right. Shabbat Shalom.